All right, next is methods on strings. Strings support a variety of operations. You can obtain a list of these methods by using the directory or dir parentheses built-in function on any string. What this really does is simply give you a list of all those keywords, right, that I was just talking about. So for instance, if I go to my Python shell, dir, set of parentheses, enter. Now these are string formatting, but if I need to have a list of all the reserved words, then I need to do dir and my strings. And this time I'm going to get a whole list of reserved words as well. So for instance, in the previous example, we used something called upper, right, and lower. So let's see if I can locate the reserved word upper here and lower. So here's lower. Okay, so that's a reserved word that we used. And notice there are several of them. So we can use rs_split, strip, split. So there's swap case and so on. We can use decimals, is digits, and there are a whole bunch of them. You can capitalize text within your strings. You can count text. You can center the text, and so on. So depending upon your own requirements, you can use any one of these methods on strings. Let's do some example. So for instance, let's say I'm going to use the s.replace method, right? And what this does, it simply returns a new string with up to the first count occurrences of the string sub replaced by replacement value. The replacement can be the empty string to delete sub, or you can tell Python to specifically replace or add to it. So for instance, if I have something like s equals, just following the example here for now, -1, 2, 3, and then I'm going to have t equals, and here I'm going to use the string and then replace method. Replace my original value that I wish to replace, and Python sort of tells me, it says, okay, s.replace, the format that I'm going to use is old, comma, and then the new. Okay, and then a count value, if any. So my old value that I would like to replace is the minus sign, and that's all I want to replace. And then I'm going to use an empty space, for instance, comma, and then 1. And what this would do is it will make t equal 1, 2, 3. Hit enter key and use the print function to print t and see what it looks like. And notice it says 1, 2, 3. Okay. Similarly, I can do another one. Replace t this time as opposed to replace s. And once again, Python automatically gives me a list of all the built-in words because it knows that I've entered a dot, and next I want to use a method. Like, what do I want to do? Okay, so I'm going to use replace. So here's my replace. Click on it. Replace. And this time I'm going to replace the minus sign and then my quotations, comma, and then 1 again. And this time if I print t again, notice it's still going to say 1, 2, 3. So regardless of any variable name, since I'm using the same replace method, it's going to use and replace the same. Now what if I have another variable such as u equals 0.2, 0.3, 0.4, right? So I have this sample value in u, and v is going to replace, so v equals u dot replace, and this time I'm going to replace just the dot or the decimal, and I'm going to replace the decimal to the count of 2, right? So if I choose 2, and this time if I print v, for instance, I'm going to get 23.4. So all I did was I took this decimal right before 2 and it moved 2 spaces or 2 characters after the word 3. So now the final value is 23.4. So this way you can work with the replace methods, and any one of these, in fact, methods like join, partition, swap. And Python is very easy. It tells you as soon as you put a dot, it knows that you're going to use a method, right? So you can pick a method and then work with the syntax. Here's another example. For instance, the syntax for the method called count. So it's s.count and then my sub. So count and return the number of repetitions of a string sub that appears as substrings inside the string s. So for instance, following this example, I have a variable called tail, simple assignment statement equals, this is the best of times, and all I'm doing here is telling tail.count. In other words, count the word I within this sentence. How many times does the word I appears in this sentence? And of course, when I run this, it says it appears 3 times. Let's try it. So for instance, here I'm going to use a variable called new text equals, I'm going to create a string here, right? So I'm going to say, my name is John, I live in Chicago, the Windy City. The city of Chicago, I'm just making this up as I go along, is famous for its architecture. Okay, so here's my new text, right? So let's say if I need to find out the count or the number of characters within this new text variable or this assignment statement. So I can say something like new text dot count, and then what do I want to count? Let's see if I'm looking for the letter I within this entire paragraph. So I'm just going to use I, hit enter key, and notice at this point it gives me an error and it shows me that the next text is not defined. And yes, of course, because I misspelled my variable name. So here I said new text, and when I wrote I said next text, right? So be careful. This tells you that you need to be very careful with your spelling, right? Whatever the variable name is, you need to specify exactly that variable name. So let's try one more time. This time I'm going to say it's new text dot count and then the letter I, and this time it tells me that 12 is the answer or the output. In other words, I is being used 12 times within this paragraph. Okay. Similarly, I can also search for words, so I can say next text or new text rather dot count, and this time let's say I'd like to find how many times the word city appeared within this paragraph. And Python tells me that it appeared twice. So one more time, you can always go to your directory and bring up your string count by typing dir, parentheses and quotations, right? And then it tells you the built-in words that you can use in Python. So I've demonstrated a couple of examples, and you can take a look at the rest of them and practice with some of these. So in this lesson, I simply wanted to elaborate upon the concept of strings a little bit further, and also introduce methods that we can use with strings, right? So we can use methods, these are built-in words in Python, and once you get to practice with some of these methods, you can always use them with strings, and they're very, very powerful. So practice, and let's move to our next lesson.